Welcome back to Core Anesthesia. Whether you are a student prepping for tests and boards or a CRNA here to earn CEUs, we are glad you've joined us. For more about us, make sure to check us out on Instagram at Core Anesthesia and online at coreanesthesia.com.
Welcome back to Core Anesthesia. I'm Cole here with Tanner, and today we are so excited to bring on two guest speakers from locumtenens.com. We have both Lisa Buxbaum and Anna Studard, and both Lisa and Anna have several years of experience with locumtenens.com, and we are so excited to bring them on today to the show and just talk about locum contracts in anesthesia. What are the advantages of doing locum contracts? Why would someone be interested in doing them? What are the different options available, and what kind of goes into the process of getting started? And so Tanner and I are both very grateful to be able to have this conversation with both Lisa and Anna today. We've gotten a lot of questions regarding this topic from a lot of our listeners, and we're just really excited to go through this conversation.
Yeah, so it's my privilege to welcome you guys onto the show here today. And Lisa has worked in the medical field for about 10 years prior to joining locumtenens.com a little over 3 years ago. Lisa is part of the sales team there and serves clients in anesthesia groups who have coverage gaps to fill. We also have Anna with us, who has been with Locum Tenens for about 15 years as a recruiter, helping clinicians find opportunities all across the United States. And so welcome, Lisa and Anna. We're just really glad to have you on the episode today.
Thank you so much, both of you. We are thrilled to be here and to join you and look forward to conversing. It's one of our favorite topics.
Awesome. I will just give a little footnote here. I'm getting ready to start my first locum contract here coming up. And so I just worked a job for about a year starting off of my career in the anesthesia world. And after that, I was looking to move across the country, wasn't sure where to take a job. And so was looking around and figured that I could start with trying to do a locum contract just to kind of get my feet wet, get to know the area, and get to kind of know the field for where I was moving to. So the things that we're going to talk about today, there's so many things that I wish I would have had answers to before I started this journey for myself. And so hopefully for those of you who are listening are maybe in the same spot that I'm in, or maybe this is just beginning to be on your radar of something you'd like to do in the future. Hopefully this will be a good episode for you to get some answers and some clarity on basically what locums looks like, some tips, tricks if you're looking to start an assignment, and just, again, maybe some clarity as you look into finding your first job or branching off into another type of anesthesia contracting. So I guess my first question for Lisa, Anna, what is the reason that somebody would choose to do locums? Why would you choose to do a locum assignment?
Hey guys, thank you so much for having us on. I'm really excited to be here and have a chance to talk and just kind of let you know how we can help a lot of you guys out. I think a lot of reasons why, I should say, our clinicians come to us and want to work with us is they want to be able to travel around. They want to get to see parts of the country that they may or may not get to do otherwise. Some do it to fill in vacation time where they don't necessarily need the time off, but want to make extra money. And then you've got those that, just want to make a ton of money and do it full time. So we kind of work with a variety of clinicians out there that kind of want to do this for a variety of reasons. Also getting exposure to different types of practices, whether they're working in a small community hospital and want to have the opportunity to go to a large level 1, alleviate burnout in a current practice that, maybe they're not getting to do certain types of cases. So now they're getting the opportunity to pick up and do other types of cases that they otherwise would not be able to do.
I think when I often hear locums, I think that it's like a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month contract. It's interesting what you just said about the different why you might do locums. You mentioned even just picking up like vacation weeks or things like that. So is that something that is pretty common as well, just those shorter looking contracts, or is it mostly like a long-term relationships that you have with hospitals as a locum worker?
That's a great question. We do see a good bit of vacation coverage opportunities for our locums. And I think as Anna relayed, there are different needs for different people that we find coming across all the locums that we work with. I cover mostly the client side, and it was interesting on a call. It was earlier this week. I have a physician is in South Carolina who runs a practice in a small surgery center, hasn't taken a vacation in 5 years. So it's very itchy. Just for 2 weeks of coverage would be such a relief to this provider, this anesthesiologist who is looking for, CRNA coverage to just allow her to have some time off, just in going along as well with burnout. So it's a big relief to be able to provide that. And we see that quite often.
Yeah, at my facility, we have almost half of our staff right now are locum CRNAs that are in helping us fill just holes because we're so short currently. But there's people that have been there for 2 years now that they're just continuing. It's not necessarily a short contract. We also have people that have come in and they're there for a month or two at a time, go somewhere else, come back for a month or two. And then we have those that come down just for a couple of days here or there randomly when their current full-time job has some gaps in it. So just as you were saying, there's no one way to do this. I feel like there's so many different options available, not just simply in geographic assignments, but just also how you go about doing it and the amount of hours that you do it. But so I guess the question I want to bring up next is we have listeners both that are currently CRNAs. Also, we have students that are going through CRNA school. And then we have a lot of ICU nurses as well that are considering going to school to learn about anesthesia and become a CRNA. And so my question would be, primarily, if someone is a student, when do they start looking for CRNA locum jobs if they're interested in that? Because we know that if somebody's already a CRNA, you really can start looking whenever for those type of jobs. But a lot of questions that we get are primarily from students wondering, can I go about doing this right away? Should I graduate and kind of work for a year or two at a facility as a W-2 employee? Is it appropriate for me just to start right away with a locum assignment? I mean, what is the best answer for that? And there may not even be a one fit answer for all, but what would you guys have to say to students that are wondering that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's not a one fit answer. I think if you're wanting to jump right in after school, after you graduate, looking about 3 months in advance of graduation, but truly a lot of our clients are going to look at you and say, have you passed your boards? Do you have an active license? There is a small amount, I think, of facilities that would consider someone ahead of passing their boards and obtaining an active license. So it's kind of both sides of it. If you're really interested, look on our job board, reach out to a recruiter, have a quick conversation about where you're looking to work. That'll give us the ability to probably hone in and see what is the best fit for you specifically. But I would say, there's also the clients too that look at you and think, okay, you have 1 or 2 years under your belt. This is a good time to start considering, a lot of them may shy away from newer graduates, but then at the same time, you've got some that are in a position where they have, multi-needs and have a large need for clinicians. So they're going to pull in as many candidates as they can. And truthfully speaking, a lot of our locums that come fresh out of school bring fresh perspective, as well as a lot of great new skill sets. So you see all types.
I wanted to piggyback on what Anna was saying about that, just with a client example of we're seeing that trend grow with facilities that typically wanted experience prior. I have a client in Tennessee. I would tell you years in the past few years, they would not have looked at a new grad to come in and work. But with the demand for surgeries and the shortage of providers, they are, having changes and realizing the benefits of even working with new grads. So that was just a case in point that happened just 2 weeks ago in Tennessee with us, that they, really switched and were open to adding new grads.
I think kind of the story that goes around is you start hearing people say like, well, if they're willing to take new grads, they must be in such bad shape that there's no way you're going to have support. There's no way that you're going to have any accountability, and you're going to be just one person totally responsible. Your license is going to be at risk because you're doing risky business and all this stuff. And the more that I've talked with locum providers, it's like you said, it's a culture shift that's changing, where students are coming out of school as strong anesthesia providers. They've learned the skills in school to be able to perform those jobs immediately out of school. And then other hospitals have now had some reps in, bringing on new grads and reps with working with new grads and making sure that there's resources available to them. So I think that I won't speak for you, but just from talking to different locum providers, it seems like that shift is changing too, where it's not like a last chance, oh, we have to just pull in new grads now. That kind of the systems are being built to allow for that now, instead of that being more of like a risky start. Would you agree with that? Or is that something that maybe you've not seen that same shift?
I was going to say, I think that's definitely an old school mindset. And as things are trending in a, more open-minded direction, not necessarily, that's never going to be a negative connotation. I think that previous mindset from, and Lisa can probably speak to this a little more, client's perspective is they're newer graduates, they're going to need a lot of hand-holding, but that's not necessarily the case. Like you just said, they're coming out strong. These CRNAs know what they're doing. They've had a lot of experience rotating between a lot of variety of facilities. I have that in Ohio specifically, where, they're going in and out of community hospitals, large hospital settings, doing a multitude of cases, and actually, having less exceptions of, where I have a new grad saying, I can do all types of cases. And then you have some that are a little more tenured saying, well, it's been years since I've done OB. I don't do epidurals, so you're capturing someone that can have a variety of a skill set. And so the mindset of giving a new grad a chance is kind of going out the door. And this is becoming open to anyone in every, capacity.
That's a great point, talking about, the different skills that you've practiced in school compared to maybe a different place that you aren't doing things as frequently. Cole and I went to the same school, and we both now practice in very different practice settings. And what he does on a daily basis versus what I do on a daily basis are very different. But I think, to go back to what you just said as well, part of that is the conversation with the actual facility. When I just reached out to this actual facility, when I got to that point of the point when we were having the conversations, it was really nice to be able to have a conversation with them and discuss with them what I was comfortable with, more so what my daily current practice looked like, and what their current daily practice looked like, and if those matched, or if there was some areas that maybe we would need to, I might need more resources for one thing versus another. So I think that's helpful to know too, that it's not just like you get thrown in here and then day one, now you get to figure out all the different borders of your practice that maybe you weren't comfortable with. Those are all conversations that happen during the application process and can be clearly communicated, in that whole application process too. So exactly what you said, there's plenty of time there as they're bringing on new grads that, one, are strong, but then two, have the ability to communicate those things ahead of time so that everybody's on the same page.
One more thing I wanted to touch on with that, and you just brought that up and it made me think about it, is I really, really urge, especially not even just new grads, any clinician, to have that opportunity to speak with the facility and the decision makers directly, so that they can have some of the more in-depth, detailed conversations about, here's what my skill set is, here's what I do on a daily basis. Because for me, if I'm going to be doing this matchmaking process, I want it to be the best match possible. And I want it to be the best fit for my clinicians possible and for my facility. So my ultimate goal is I want to set up usually I will try to set up a phone interview prior to moving forward, just so everybody can feel comfortable. And I think it also makes it feel like it's a real thing. Like talking to the agency and me presenting you and telling you all the details of the job is one thing, but connecting you with the facility and having that actual conversation from a clinical standpoint just further adds more to the reality of this job.
And before we move on, I think it's a good time to bring up a point where, for people that are about ready to graduate, regardless of if you're looking for a permanent W-2 position or if you're looking for a 1099 locum assignment, whatever the case may be, I've been told this multiple times, and Tanner and I, if you've been kind of following along with our podcast, you know that we graduated a little over a year ago. We just finished about a year of practicing, and this same advice came up to me multiple times, and now I find myself telling other people this as well. In looking for your first job out of school, especially, we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but a lot of people are more comfortable taking care of a variety of cases when they first graduate. And Tanner already alluded to this. Him and I will practice completely differently. He does peripheral nerve blocks all the time at his job. And at my facility, the CRNAs do not do that. And that was something that I felt very comfortable with when I graduated, but it's been over a year since I've done one of those. But on the flip side, I'm doing epidurals and open heart procedures, and Tanner hasn't done those in over a year. And so there's things that we found ourselves getting less comfortable with something. And so my advice would be, with looking for a job, regardless of if it's W-2, 1099, et cetera, try not to lock yourself into a very narrow practice facility when you first graduate, but you're going to learn so much and grow so much in that first year out that it's just so important to be able to go somewhere that you're able to practice and exercise so many different areas of our scope of practice, just because you're already familiar with those. And the longer you get out of school, the longer you go between doing certain things, the less comfortable you will be doing those. And so, like, the thought of me having to do a peripheral nerve block tomorrow, for example, would make me very nervous the night before. Whereas when I was in school, I was very comfortable with that. And Tanner would be totally fine doing that because he does it every day. And so that is just, I know it's a little bit of a side point and off on a tangent, but that is something that I would advise when you're looking at your first job is try to steer away from just limiting yourself to a very narrow scope of practice in your first facility, just because that first year you grow so much in your independence. So for those that are looking at doing a locums job, how do they go about even making that first step of communicating what they're looking for in an assignment for a recruiter? So, for example, if they're going to go off of what I just said and they're looking for some facility that has a wide range of things they can do, or they might be looking for something that's specific to OB. Maybe they love OB and they want to target doing something just for putting in epidurals and C-sections, et cetera. Whatever the case may be, how do they go about looking and communicating with the recruiter as to what they want and what their desires are in this type of job?
So when we first start speaking with our locums clinicians, we run through a gamut of questions. You know, what types of cases are you looking to do? What types of cases are you not comfortable with? So we'll ask it two different ways so that we make sure and cover everything. Are there certain types of shifts you're looking for? Availability is a big thing. I would say honing in on availability if you're full-time, 40 hours a week, or if you're looking for something PRN. Like we kind of spoke about that earlier, about the different types of availability and ways you can go about doing locums. So we really try to hone in on all types of what exactly makes your perfect match for your job. So if you're only wanting to do OB and you tell me that outright, that kind of, it's basically like a matchmaking thing. I'll go through and I'll be like, okay, here are all my OB jobs. This is what I can offer you. And then we'll kind of narrow down from there. It's almost like a narrowing process. Like I said, it's a matchmaking process. And I love it. I really do enjoy it because I try my best to make sure I find exactly what fits you, because I'm here to support my clinicians and make sure that I hear and your voice is also heard and that you're finding exactly what fits you. And then from there, we make sure it fits what the client needs. And then, we'll further go down and discuss, types of rates that you're looking for, what locations you're looking for, if you're looking for East Coast, West Coast, So it, just like I said, it's just kind of a matchmaking process of narrowing down to find out specifically what meets what you need.
I love how you just worded that you make sure it fits you and then take it to the facility and make sure that's a good fit there. I did travel nursing before I went back to anesthesia school. And that was honestly one of my favorite parts of doing this travel work lifestyle. And one of the reasons I'm excited to get back to it is just some months you thought, I'm going to really grind this out and I want to, make some money because I've got something coming up and I want to get that paid for. Some months I was like, I want to live in Hawaii and I want to work half the week and I don't really want to work the rest of the week. And so figuring out, like, my needs change from month to month, or what I perceive them to be, or whatever I'm wanting them to be. And that's what I love about this, work lifestyle. And what you just said is really cool to hear from a recruiter standpoint too, making sure that fit works for the clinician first. And then you've got a wide range of jobs that you can go look at and try to dial in something that matches both. So definitely, I think that's the whole point for us. I mean, that's really exciting. I think when I think about jumping back from one job to another, and I'm currently in the middle of this, one of the things I think can be a little unnerving when looking at a next assignment is looking at just the amount of effort that goes into credentialing, or if you've ever changed jobs, the amount of phone calls that go back and forth with making sure that everything is lined up, that all your paperwork is lined up. And so what does that look like? What can we do as clinicians to make sure that we're organized and we have things put together so that process goes smoothly? And also, what does a typical credentialing period look like when you are doing locums?
Those are great questions, and certainly ones we get a lot. I know Anna fields most of that as a recruiter in terms of what documents need to be available. And the truth is, you will be asked for the same documents over and over at assignments. With our company, with LT.com, one of the things that we do is we do an online application, and we have an online portal for credentialing. So we'll internally credential a provider as we're starting. So many times once you've started with us, we will have those documents available, so to speak, a rinse, wash, repeat, having them. And then we're updating with the CV as the jobs progress and needing to add there. We make that a really, really simple process. And I'm sure Anna will be able to add some tips in a minute here on other documents I think that could be available and could be ready. It is, I like your word, it is unnerving. It can be a headache, I think, as we've heard that described as well. I think that's the same for the hospital side, and there can be some frustrations there. So one of what we do in working and developing relationships with our CRNAs and our providers is to diminish as much as we can those headaches and make them a little bit smoother. Most facilities take somewhere between about 60 to 90 days for credentialing. Some go faster, some go longer, just depends. Temporary privileges can be available depending on the need, and they can be anywhere from a week, 2 weeks, up to, it could be 60 days, cutting back 30 to 60 days on the end of full privileges. And in addition, full privileges will run in tandem with temporary privileges. So once a provider has started at a facility, they get issued temporary privileges to start there. There will still be questions and some signatures that are needed along the way as we are awaiting the full privileges to be issued. So that is just kind of one aspect there. I'm going to let Anna here weigh in on a couple other things about some documents and kind of organization. She's great with that.
Yes, I know it's daunting. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm in it with you, though.
Yes.
I really am your biggest supporter. I truthfully, I have this conversation every day. The biggest thing, the biggest struggle, I think, is references. People get so tired of asking their references over and over again. I wish I knew the simple solution of saying credentialing is going to be, smooth and simple. And the truth of it is, it's not always that way. We do our best, truthfully, to try and get everything we can on the front end and avoid bugging you during the day or even during the process altogether. But ultimately, we have moments where we need your help and we can't get a hold of your references, or we don't have access to this verification. Recently, I had a provider tell me about, facilities being closed and no longer able to get a verification. So that's been a hurdle we've had to, overcome. And the reality of that is, if the facility's closed, they're going to accept that it's closed and there's no way to obtain that verification. It is daunting and it is a process. But at the end of the day, you've got people here supporting you, trying their best to make it all happen.
I remember when I was, again, I can only reference back to before I went through anesthesia school, but doing travel nursing, we would always be going through like the credentialing process. And we were like, this is a little frustrating, and I'm supposed to be my day off, and I'm calling around to where I got my, tetanus shot 5 years ago, or, whatever it was. And that could be frustrating. And then in the middle of the contract, and you're past all of that, you're like, well, this is why I went through, the little bit of a headache. Also, what you said about recruiters being on your side, you guys are so nice. There's my recruiter that I'm working with right now. She just said, you've been great to work with through the credentialing process. And I'm like, you've asked me 6 straight days in a row for the same document. I know that I can't be that nice to work with. I just haven't been able to get it to her. So no, I know it is just kind of a give and take process, but it is definitely something that feels kind of strenuous in the time. And then once you get past it and you actually get working, it's just kind of the cost of doing business. So not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I often say we're almost to the finish line. We're going to get there, and you're going to forget this whole conversation about being frustrated and it being difficult. So the second you walk in the door, this is what it was all for. Yeah.
Do you guys have any? I know you guys. You mentioned that you keep that online for your clients. That you'll keep everything together. Have you heard of anybody say that? Do they keep like an Excel file or just like a Word document with certain documents, all with immunizations or previous case logs, or is there anything like that that's helpful to just have on hand?
So I have quite a few providers that hold just basically like a zip file that has everything from their CV to references to case logs to medical records. All of that usually falls into a zip file, and then licenses. I'm just sitting here thinking of everything, certifications, you name it, NBCRNA. At the end of the day, we have an online portal. So as you update things, all you have to do is log in to it's called the Locum Tenens online experience. You log in, you can literally upload everything. It gets automatically input into our system. So you're not having to track me down to obtain your stuff. You have access to that information too. So it's a two-way street. We all have access to the same information.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so helpful. I think just the name of the game is organization, especially when getting all of this stuff submitted. And also, I mean, the facility on their side of things, I can understand would be frustration to get things, one at a time or trying to get all of their files completed. And so, yeah, just any way that you can be more organized, I think from our standpoint is very helpful. What type of anesthesia providers do you typically get that are doing locums? Is there like a typical profile or a typical person that you would see that tends to do the locum tenens contracting?
So years ago, we would have said, yes, there is a very specific profile. And now the answer is definitively no. It's not very specific. It is quite diverse. And that's been the exciting part of locums is we are welcoming clinicians into locums who want to do this as a full-time career and set out to make locums their full-time position. We're in a gig economy, and I think that's no exception to in the medical field that we are welcoming full-time locums that are choosing this. So we've got the full-time working 40 to 50 weeks per year. We've got new grads after, right out of school, we've already discussed, or with a little bit of experience, maybe have started with a W-2, but really like the idea of coming into a locums field. So we've got the new grads. We have those who are more mid-career. Maybe they're looking to supplement a little bit of extra income into their life or learn new skills and work in different acuity levels, contemplating a different segment to their career, and locums is a wonderful way for them to try that out, or keeping skills sharp or maintaining a license. And then we also have those who are retired or not ready for full retirement, but want to keep their fingers in the pot and, want to get away from the daily grind, but keep their toes dipped in the water and on their own schedule and on their own terms. So that's a lot of what we're seeing right now.
So when it comes to one of the main reasons I hear people wanting to do locum work, really there's two that I often get. Like I said, the facility I work at, we usually have about 30 CRNAs a day covering rooms, and I would say almost half of them are locums right now. And I love talking with a variety of them, just seeing what brought them to doing locums, where they're at in their career, et cetera. And the number one and number two answers I often get as to why they're doing this is, one, They wanted the ability to be able to make their own schedule in a sense, not have to necessarily be working 40 plus hours a week at the same facility every day. They wanted some type of control over that. And then two, it also came back to money. They were able to get paid a lot more. The tax write-offs were better. They're able to just overall net gain a lot more money by doing a locum type job and maybe not have to work as many hours. And so I guess my question is, how does it work necessarily with people putting in their quote time at a facility and then getting paid? Is it the same as if they were at a W-2 facility where they were getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, every month? Do they have to worry about any type of the billing? Does the agency that they're with do all of that? How does that process work in terms of them actually seeing that money get put into their bank account for the hours they're putting in?
So we at locumtenants.com, we do pay weekly, which is exciting. We have an online portal where you will go and input your hours and your time for the week. And then it automatically goes to the client to approve. So it's just, we're completely kind of out of the middle part of that. So you don't have to submit it to your recruiter who then turns around and hands it to the client. We used to have old school way. I'm really showing how long I've been here. We used to have paper timesheets where they had to take and walk them to the client face to face, hand them their paper timesheet and stand there and wait for them to approve the timesheet, which can sometimes be awkward and uncomfortable. But so now we've got this whole online system and it's been amazing. As long as the timesheet's submitted on time and approved on time, the clinician is paid the same week. So basically for the week prior, you would submit your timesheet on a Monday, the client would approve it by Wednesday, and then you'd be paid that Friday for the previous week of work. So it's pretty seamless and it goes pretty quickly. It's pretty seamless overall.
Right. I took part in the paper walk of shame to the manager and would have them sign it off. Or more realistically, I'd always forget. So I'd be like texting them late at night and be like, hey, can you sign this? And then it was just a nightmare trying to get paid. So that's awesome that is all done electronically now. The other thing I wanted to just touch base with that is, I know sometimes with W-2, one of the big pulls for that is, hey, you're going to work with us. There's opportunities for overtime and there's opportunities to come in on your days off, which I know is kind of one of the backdoor reasons that you might want to do locums too, with working on your days off. So is there capability for that within contracts too? And how does that work if somebody's trying to work maybe more than their contract allows, or is that even a possibility with some of these jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as overtime goes, so for example, I want to back up and say this too, that since COVID, that has just turned the world on itself. I really think when it comes to personal time versus working, people have just really dedicated more time to their personal life and then realize that, there's got to be some work-life balance there. So I've noticed the change where I have CRNAs doing 3/12s or a week on, a week off. So a variety. And then, often answering your question, 3/12s, and they want to pick up, an extra shift, an 8-hour shift to go over the 40 hours. Absolutely. We're here to support you and the client. If the client has the need and you want to work extra, we're all for it.
I was just going to add in that sometimes when we may have somebody that offers 1 or 2 days per week, they may not be offering a full week or a 40-hour week. And there are many times that we can structure our agreements that they may have overtime after their shift. So if they're working an 8 or 10-hour shift, it could be overtime structured after that shift. Or if it's a full week, it's more common to see overtime structured after that, 48-hour week.
So to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, if I was going to just pick up 2 days at a facility, 2/12s maybe, so I'm working 24 hours, I wouldn't have to wait if we structured it per day. I wouldn't have to wait till I hit the 40-hour mark to then start making overtime. If I picked up another 8-hour shift, that would be considered overtime for that facility compared to like a typical 40-hour work week.
That's correct. It's just depending on the structure of the client agreement
Sure.
and what the provider or the CRNA wants to request. So that's all part of that kind of negotiation part in structuring a contract.
That's awesome. Is there, I think this just opens up a whole nother side of things with discussing with clients before you would take a contract, even talking about overtime or maybe hours worked or many of those things. Do you have just like a short list of things that you have seen CRNAs ask for that you think that maybe is not standard in a contract, but maybe something that you see like routinely, like that, for example, like overtime per day compared to a week, or, you know, guaranteed hours or anything like that? I'm sure there's a myriad of requests or demands that are shot for, but are there certain things that are pretty, you know, like reasonable that you would try to include in your contract, or different ways of wording things, I guess, even like for overtime, that you would suggest?
It's really going to be based on a couple of different things. Like, for example, we sign our client contracts prior to recruitment, right? So the client agreement may say overtime after 40 hours. However, there's always negotiation. So maybe my clinician wants to do 312s and wants the overtime after 12. We just need to be very clear and specific when we're presenting the information to the client. The last thing I'd ever want to do is come back and make the clinician look as if they're asking for more after the fact. So I try to be very upfront and very transparent on both sides, both mostly to make sure, because I work with my clinicians to make sure they get what they need out of their contract. So up front, I say, tell me everything you need. If they need mileage or they need lodging or they prefer a stipend over us arranging that, because we do have an internal travel department that will arrange all of those things. It's just all kind of just talking it out up front and making sure before I present this over, not that that's the end all be all, but we just don't want to come back and look like we're going, okay, now instead of 40 hours, overtime after 40, I want overtime after 12. It's just being clear. I think the communication is key there on what you need personally.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are doing this balancing act of a lot of it is probably the same in the end, but it's kind of how it's presented and how both parties feel about it at the very end. I can imagine that's a challenging process. So piggybacking off of that, what would be some tips that you would have for a 1099 contractor? I think a lot of times in school, we're kind of geared to think more towards W-2 employees, hospital employees. I know for some schools that's not the case, but at least in our experience, that was our story. So tips for being a 1099 contractor, what are some things that maybe you wouldn't think about?
I think that overall, just having the support of a full team behind you, whether that's, you've got your recruiter, you've got a credentialing specialist, a licensing specialist if needed, you've got a travel specialist if you need travel. We have after hours concierge service on the weekends or even in the evenings. I mean, it's 24/7. So you've got full support. You're not always having to handle everything on your own. You don't have to handle billing. That question earlier about billing, I wanted to kind of revert back and just answer that quickly. You fill out the billing paperwork directly for the facility and we pass that through. The facility still handles all the billing. Clinicians, CRNAs don't have to do that. We'll take care of that. We send you all the paperwork pre-filled as best we can, signatures, you're done. But not only that, I just think even you don't have to get wrapped up in necessarily the day-to-day of maybe some of the things that are required with W-2 as a 1099. You have a recruiter if you're having an issue with, being put in certain cases and you want to have more of a variety. You have the opportunity to speak and work through your recruiter who can have your back and support you in that manner to make sure that you're getting what you need out of the contract. So you're going to have that opportunity versus when you do maybe per diem directly with a hospital or a W-2. We cover your malpractice. That's huge. I know a lot of CRNAs have questions coming out of school is who has to provide the malpractice? Do I get it? Do you guys get it? No, Locum Tenens will cover, locumtenens.com, and most agencies cover your malpractice for you. The majority of my clinicians say they're so glad that they have somebody to call no matter what. If it's a pay issue, personal issue, whatever it is, you have me to come to and I can help you with whatever this situation is.
I keep going back to my nursing traveling experience. I'm sorry, that's just all I have to parallel this with. But I remember my wife was a NICU nurse and we traveled together. But I just remember we talked about, all the benefits. Pay, of course, is always up there. Work-life balance schedule was really high for us. But then our agency and our actual recruiter was so high on the list for us because our very first assignment, we went somewhere to this hospital and just wasn't good working conditions. My wife was having trouble in the NICU and just didn't feel like some of the things that were being run was, best practice, and just didn't really feel good about the situation she was in. I didn't really feel good about the ICU that I was in. And we called our recruiter and she took care of the whole thing for us. She heard our concerns. She obviously took time to make sure that there were things that we could work through, or if it was actually like facility issues. She made all the calls. We didn't touch any of that. We expressed our concerns and she was able to manage a lot of that for us. And that became one of the highest things on our priority list. Like you just mentioned, the support was just massive. Of course, pay and time and all those things are huge, but having somebody that you can call that is experienced in these contracts, experienced in these negotiations, experienced in how all of this works, and being able to be that person for you and have those conversations is just so important. So I think I can't echo that enough.
I wanted to mention, if I could chime in on just a few of the other benefits and talking about being a 1099 and what some of kind of the business side benefits are to that. And I think, it goes without saying, Anna nor I are accountants or attorneys to advise there, but we have seen just some through our experiences with our providers that, you can have a lot of expenses that you can write off: cell phone, internet, trade shows, continuing education, home office expenses. So there are a lot of financial benefits, again, referring you back to a financial professional for permanent guidance on that. But we do see a lot of benefits financially for that. You do have an opportunity to purchase your own insurance through a third-party health coverage or 401k options. You are able to set up typically a SEP account, so a retirement plan, simplified employee pension. So just a couple of other benefits that are there as a 1099 that are favorable.
So what would you guys have to say? Because there's obviously a lot of benefits from doing locums. And as Tanner already alluded to, having a good recruiter means the world of a difference. And so what would you guys have to say specifically for working with locumtenens.com as opposed to other recruiting agencies? What benefits would you say you guys have to offer compared to something else that somebody would go look at?
So as a company that's been in business well over 25 years, we have a lot of solid structure to our organization. And we are divided in locumtenens.com. We are divided and trained by medical specialty. So Anna and I are experts in anesthesia and anesthesia in anesthesia recruitment. We are experts in that. You all are experts in the actual anesthesia. So we know the business and we know how locums works. We know how placement works. We know how to serve not only our clients, we know how to serve our clinicians, and we value both very strongly and try to keep that very balanced in terms of making good placements and having good relationships. And, like Anna has communicated, we are here to help our clinicians every step of the way. We kind of Velcro ourselves to your hip during the process so that you feel very comfortable and confident in securing and going to your next assignment. And just the convenience that we offer of all the different credentialing, licensing, travel support. We have a concierge support 24 hours when you're on assignment with us. If anything happens during that, your plane is late, your rental car is delayed, we have someone there at 2 a.m. and beyond to assist you. So you are truly by yourself, working by yourself, but you are not completely by yourself. You have that support from us. And we've got the largest job board in the industry. You are able to search on our job board for postings. It is a free service to you. Our clients can post there for free. So we have a tremendous resource in that. I think one of the best things that we tout is we have one of the highest association retention rates. Just like Anna here, who's been with locumtenants.com for 15 years, she has served the same clinicians for years who are career locums or come and provide vacation coverage and develop rapport and develop relationships with them. And those are very long lasting and very, very dear. We've got just an onboarding program that you are ready to go to your assignment and feel prepared. And those are some of the really tremendous benefits of working with us. And Anna's going to cover a few of the others.
Look, I want to add this in. We are not perfect. And by no means do I want to, sell that we are always going to land perfect on things. We do take feedback very seriously. We do include surveys where, you can provide honest feedback, with the company, with the facility, in your overall experience. I just think I truly, over the 15 years, I pride myself in developing relationships. I consider a lot of the folks that I work with, I spend more time here in the office than I do at home and in my personal life. And I truly feel passionate about the folks that I work with and want to make sure that I find the best placements that work for you guys. And at the end of the day, y'all become my friends, and I want my friends to have the best experience possible. So that is truly where my heart lies in all of this. Is the most important part of this is making sure we find clinicians to fill the holes in the void in placement at hospitals. And that's the number one priority. And that is not forgotten throughout this whole process.
And I think the relationship side of things goes a long way. Tanner and I were actually just talking about this the other day with a similar topic, just in the regards of, it's kind of like insurance. When somebody buys insurance, you might only change once or twice in your life, but once you find something that you like, you just stick with it. And so if you can have a very good first impression, you form that relationship, there's that social aspect there to know that you have that support system, somebody that has your back. It just goes a long way. But even with that being said, though, it's nice to know that there's also the availability to provide feedback and for growth in that standpoint, so that if there are things that you wish could be done better, that you guys are open to doing that. I think that goes a long way. So to kind of wrap up here at the end, like I said before, we have a variety of listeners all across the spectrum of either they're already CRNAs that are currently working, and there's a growing number of CRNAs I've found that are switching over, that have been W-2 employees for years and are now starting to shift gears and wanting to do 1099. So whether you're somebody that's already a CRNA, you're looking at maybe making that first leap and jumping into your first locum assignment, whether you're a student who is potentially considering doing this right after you graduate, because if somebody is interested in doing a locums assignment, what would you say is their first step they should do? What is the next step after listening to this conversation, that if they're excited about it, they want to know more information about it, what all it would entail, regardless of if they're a CRNA or a student, what would your recommendation be as for their next step?
I think number one, take a look at our job board, see if there's something that interests you. Reach out to a recruiter, whether that's myself or, anyone else here. Like I said, we've got a ton of recruiters here to help and jump in and answer questions. I think those two things, check the job board, reach out to a recruiter here so that we can help guide you. I know in my experience in talking with so many new to locums providers, they want someone to kind of help walk them through it. We cover all 50 states. So, there's no one, it's not like a one-stop shop and you can only work in these certain areas. We cover every single state. We have about 15 recruiters here ready to jump in and help you navigate. We are a referral-based industry and we truly pride ourselves on referrals. So I say ask around, make sure, check on the companies that you want to work with and the recruiter you want to work with. I think that's important. And I think trust is a huge thing when you're working with someone else, is to truly trust them and feel good about who you're working with.
So again, I just want to reiterate, we're just really grateful for the time you guys have spent with us. We hope this is beneficial. This is educational to all of our listeners. And if this is something that you're interested in doing, I really recommend that you just kind of take that first step. Just start looking at different available options there are, just different recruiting agencies. Locumtenens.com, as Dave said, are a great resource. We're so grateful for them being on here. And we hope that if this is something you're interested in, that you find success in doing this.